One thing I get asked about an awful lot is seed sowing. How to sow seeds, when's the best time to sow them, and which growing medium to use. And I use this, which is multi-purpose compost. This has had a little bit of vermiculite and slow release fertiliser added, and that's simply because of the type of seeds I'm going to be putting in here, but most of the time I would just use regular multi-purpose compost with nothing added at all. You can use loam-based compost, or if you make your own compost and it's good enough quality, you just need to make sure it's very, very well sterilised to ensure there are no weed seeds in there or bacterial or fungal diseases that could harm your seedlings. You can also buy specialist seed sowing compost as well, but I've found that this works really, really well for me. When to sow? Well, that to a certain extent depends on what it is you're actually going to be growing. Now, most of the hardy perennials will germinate very well from a spring sowing, and they then have all summer to then grow on to a good size, ready to be planted out in the garden. There are some, however, that do benefit from a period of chilling in cool, damp compost, and those are plants such as some of the thalictrums, sanguisorbas and trollius, and they tend to be better if they're sown in the autumn, September, October time, and they can then just overwinter in the seed trays and you'll get germination in the spring, and then you can prick out the seedlings as you usually would. There are other plants though that will germinate either end of the season or even throughout the summer months, and the ones I'm going to be sowing today are one of those. I'm sowing Mechanopsis linghome, the Himalayan blue poppy. Now these are seeds that I've collected myself from the plants in the garden here. I used to sow most of my Mechanopsis early in the year, January, February time, and they would germinate as things started to warm up and as the days started to get longer in March and April. However, with these hot, dry springs that we tend to be getting now in April and May, I found that the hot weather is really affecting the young seedlings, and they do struggle a bit. They scorch very easily and they dry out very easily, which they absolutely hate. So I'm having better success now by sowing these seeds in September, October, and again they germinate relatively quickly, but I've got nice young seedlings then that go into the winter, and then by early next year they can be potted up, and they do seem to grow on so much better. So, and make sure I labelled the bag, got the name on there, Mechanopsis linghome, and the year that it was collected as well. It's always handy, especially if you don't sow the seed straight away. It's really easy to forget not only what's in there, but also when you collected it, and is it old seed or is it fresh seed. Now these were dry when I picked them. Always collect seeds on a dry day. You want the seed heads to be nice and dry and the seeds inside them as well, otherwise there is the risk of them getting a fungal disease and rotting away, and it affects the viability of your seeds as well. These were then taken into the house for a couple of weeks, kept somewhere warm and dry, just to make sure that the seeds would drop out of the seed heads nice and easily, which they have done. Just give them a bit of a shake in here just to dislodge any others. Might still be in there. There's a few more seeds dropping out, but most of them are out of here now. Now, one of the quirks with Mechanopsis is they produce these little sort of pepper pot seed heads like that, and a lot of people are a bit too enthusiastic and keen to collect their seeds, and they pick them before these have started to open up. You can see there they've actually just popped open and started to peel back a bit, opening up the pepper pot so that the seeds can drop out when the stems of the plant are blown around in the breeze. Now if you pick Mechanopsis seed heads before these little pepper pots have started to open up, essentially it means that the seed inside isn't ripe, and therefore it won't be viable and it won't germinate. So be patient and wait until they've started to open, and then you can collect them. If you can clean your seeds as quickly as you can once they're dry, then again they will store better, because you're just removing any bits and pieces, any bits of chaff that are in there that might be carrying a fungal disease. So again, now I've got a bag here full of Mechanopsis linghome seeds. Now there's far too many here to sow straight into a seed tray, so I wouldn't do that. What I'm going to do is just tip them out into this saucer, because I just want to sow a few of these today. There's a little bit of chaff in here, but not too much. It'll be easy to separate it out in this tray. But what I would normally do is take these into the house, tip them out onto a piece of A4 paper, and then it makes it really, really easy just to separate out any large pieces of chaff, any other bits of detritus that have got in there, the odd insect that always ends up mixed in with the seeds, it's inevitable, And then when you sort through it all, you're left with a pretty clean batch of seed that can be stored safely. In terms of storing your seed, if you don't want to sow it straight away, something I found works really, really well is you want to store your seeds somewhere cool and dark and dry. That's the main thing. That will keep your seeds viable for longer. I used to pop all my seed packets straight into the freezer, but I found that a small glass jar or a plastic tub, anything like that, pop the seeds in there, a little packet of silica gel to remove any excess moisture that there might be, and then pop them in the fridge. And that's perfect. And seeds will remain viable for a long time if stored in conditions like that. Well, I'm just going to take a pinch of these for now to sow into my compost, because even in a tiny pinch like this in the palm of my hand, there will be a huge number of seeds. Just doesn't look a lot, but there will be about 100 seeds in there, possibly more. They're quite large Meconopsis seeds, so they're nice and easy to handle. You can sow them very carefully in perfect rows, but seeds this size is a little bit tricky to do, so I just try and sprinkle them relatively thinly over the surface of the compost. Larger seeds such as honesty, lupins, they're really easy to handle, and you can either sow them directly into modules, little pots, or just very neat rows in a tray of compost. These ones, it isn't so easy, so just a very thin sprinkling works well. So thin sprinkling, because if you sow the seeds too thickly, then when they germinate, they come up just looking like cress. And if you don't get them pricked out quickly, then you are more likely to have problems with botrytis, nasty fungal disease, which can then cause your seedlings to damp off and die. So it's better to sow less seedlings in a tray and just do a few extra seed trays of seedlings. It also means you don't have to rush to prick them out quite so soon, because they're not going to get too crowded. You can let them develop to a slightly better size, because sometimes if they're really small, they can be very fragile, very hard to handle, Meconopsis in particular. Now I'm going to label this again just to make sure that I know what it is and when I sowed it. So Meconopsis Linghome, September 2020 is on the label. Pencil still works best. All the black markers are good up to a point, but I haven't found any that are truly permanent yet. So pop that into there. I always put the month and the year onto the label, because some seeds can take a long time to germinate. Trilliums, for example, can take several years. And it's useful to know, just so that you don't go throwing the seed tray out, because you might want to give them a little bit longer before they germinate. Others, you'll know if they haven't germinated within 6 months, they're obviously not going to grow, and you're as well just to put the tray of compost outside. So the final thing is to top off with, in this case, vermiculite. I like using it and it works really, really well. You can use perlite. I find perlite very dusty, and I haven't had the greatest results when I've used it on the top of seed trays like this. Can use coarse grit, anything like that, but again, just I like vermiculite, and I found it just seems to work very, very well for me. So a thin layer over the top, not too much. These are quite chunky seeds, so they can tolerate a reasonable covering on them. Some of the very fine seeds, such as primulas, you barely want to cover them at all, because you imagine you're burying them under a deep layer in terms of the seeds. Even just a half a centimetre of vermiculite is quite deep for a tiny primula seed, and they've got to find the energy to push their way up through that layer. Meconopsis seeds are quite chunky, quite large, and therefore they can push their way up through this, no bother at all. I would then give this a really good watering, and I would just put it into the cold greenhouse. You could put it into a cold frame, or if you've got a sheltered spot outside. Doesn't need any artificial heat at all. It is more than warm enough at the moment to get these to germinate. And these should germinate pretty quickly. I would expect to see seedlings appearing in the next few weeks. And just to show you, here are some that I sowed in July. This is another Meconopsis. This is Meconopsis fertile blue group. What you will notice in this tray though, they're really quite sparse. They're very, very poor and erratic germination. And this was because this was an old packet of seed that I literally just found lying on the side in the potting shed, much to my shame. It hadn't been properly stored in the fridge. And it was at least a couple of years old. And obviously it has affected the viability of the seedlings because I slung the whole lot into here. There were an awful lot of seeds. If it had been fresh seed, this would look like a tray of cress. However, that hasn't happened. And so I've got a few here, then they look healthy enough. So these will get pricked out and potted up into individual pots, and they can then go into a cold frame for the winter. Just to show you the difference between old seed and fresh seed. Now, admittedly, these aren't Meconopsis, but these are Pulsatilla vulgaris, and this is a variety Papageno, which has lovely frilly flowers. This was from fresh seed that I collected from my own plants, and I sowed these the same time as those Meconopsis, and there is much, much better germination there. Just shows the difference between using good fresh seed. It really does work wonders. So there you go. It's pretty straightforward. The main thing is just to have a go. Don't be frightened of it not working. Often the best way to learn is by your mistakes as well, and we've all made plenty of those, but that just shows that you can successfully grow lots of wonderful little plants from your own homemade seed as well. It doesn't even need to be expensive seeds that you've bought in a garden centre. Just go around your garden, have a go, collect a few seed heads, ask your friends and neighbours if they've got something nice growing in their garden, you fancy having a go at it. Just collect a handful of seeds or a couple of berries, pop them in a seed tray of compost, or even just a small pot if it's a few seeds, and see what happens. And you never know, you might get a pleasant surprise.